Hello, everyone. It's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, I have an amazing guest with me today. This was at the last minute, but he was nice enough to accept my invite. Mike, how do I pronounce your last name? Figueredo?
Yeah, that's close enough. Yeah.
Wait. I want to know what exactly it is. I don't
Uh,
want to nail
it's
it.
it's Figueredo, but
Figueredo.
I usually just say, like, if you say it's Mike from the Humanist Report, that will suffice because it's a very difficult name to pronounce.
Screw that. Mike Figueredo from the Humanist
That
Report
was good.
has been nice enough to come on to the show. There were a few questions that I had just from one of the shows that he did that I watched that I wanted to explore and go into a little bit. So welcome to the show and thank you for coming on.
Thank you, man. I'm glad to be here.
All right, so let me make sure make sure we're live and that there's no oddities. Yes, good, we're live. So Tulsi Gabbard. There are two questions, and then maybe follow up within the context of these two questions. I saw a show that you did on Tulsi Gabbard, and in that show, you kind of made this point about her past aggressively anti-gay, either rhetoric or positions. And I call it aggressively because when I read it, I was like, "Oh God!" Like it was just rough. It's like, "Oh my God!" Like it's one thing to be like, I'm against gay marriage. Like it's another thing to, pull like a Ted Cruz or another guy Pitts, Mike Pitts. But she's called to account. She's come. She's apologized for those positions, especially for the way that it might have hurt people. That said, there was an article that I read that Tulsi Gabbard was responding, and she kind of made this point of, look, everything that I've done in the objective world, this kind of expert reality, has been to support the LGBTQ community. But that's not the same thing as what I'm thinking. Like, those are two very different things. You might think that just because you're in the Democratic Party, you have to toe the identity line, which you have to check on your behavior. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, she responded to you saying that wasn't it at all. And even, I think, in her interview with Jordan, she kind of made this point of, no, I've changed on this account.
Yeah. So the day after I had put out the video, I got a voice message from her campaign manager. I don't know how they got my number, by the way, but I got a message.
I was saying the same.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm not in. I don't have access to politicians, but I got a message from her campaign manager saying, "Look, that article, and it's in reference to an Aussie article where they just kind of interview her. It wasn't necessarily an overtly political article. It was just kind of a profile of a rising star." And one of the lines in the article was not a quote from Tulsi, but it talks about her past, her anti-LGBTQ past, and it claimed that her personal stance had not changed.
Right there. That's what it was.
But she openly supports it, just politically. So if you look at her voting record, for example, it's 100% pro-LGBTQ. Now, I don't speak for 100% of the LGBTQ community. I'm just one person who I interpreted that as that's not good, because if you're going to be an ally, then even though it's phenomenal for you to be able to separate, that conflicting belief, but also from your personal actions as a politician, even though that's good, like, I do think that personally, I want you to be vested in LGBTQ rights, because that, I believe, will affect the extent to which you're wanting to fight. I want you to want to fight. I don't want you to just be drug along because that's what's politically expedient. Now, since I made that video, she has kind of touched on the fact that, yes, my personal views have also evolved. And what I was told by her campaign manager at the time was that that reference to personal views doesn't make clear that she was referencing abortion. So it seems as if, as far as we know, that Tulsi is personally in favor of LGBTQ rights, and her heart matches her voting record, which is good. So my only point that I think needs to be clarified is, why would you allow that article that I think is damaging, and it was published in 2015, to remain up? Because it's technically wrong. So why not come out and correct the record, for lack of a better word?
Wrong. When I read that article, I came away with it. Oh, her personal views haven't changed. It's just her political views.
Exactly.
Like, that's me looking at that article. I came away with the exact same perspective.
Me too. And I'll tell you this, I tried to look for other I tried to find a way to contradict it because I didn't really believe it. And I couldn't find anything with evidence from Tulsi herself. And part of the problem, which really led me to believe that, oh, well, it's clear that her personal views hadn't changed, was because back in 2016, I think it was, the LGBTQ caucus in Hawaii saw the same article and they refused to endorse her because of that. So my thought was, you know, you have to come out and say this article is misrepresenting my views. But the fact that she didn't is problematic. But with that being said, I do acknowledge now that she has kind of gone the distance to really say, no, my personal views have changed. But it's just a matter of why not, you know, come out and say this article is wrong. That line is wrong. Because if somebody said something like that about me, I would want to clarify my position, especially if it starts ruffling feathers in Hawaii, you know, with the LGBTQ caucus. So that's the only clarification that I need currently. But in terms of LGBTQ, I'm pretty much become convinced that she would be a good ally. And look, a lot of people do knock her for being like more anti-LGBTQ than other people, but I can't personally hold that against her. I mean, I can, but I can empathize with her because even LGBTQ people like myself, like I've grown up in that environment where my family was really homophobic. So I can get how that can be ingrained in you. You know what I mean? And sometimes those people who are the most anti-LGBTQ become the best allies because they feel like they have to make up for whatever damage they cause. So it's not like, oh, well, we have to write off Tulsi forever. I just wanted clarification. And I know that there are a lot of LGBTQ people that I saw in my comments that said, Mike, you're taking this way too far because all that matters is her voting record, but it just depends on the individual. And my view is I just want to know because Tulsi is someone who I don't look at her as an average politician. To me, she's one of the best. So if you're one of the best, then I've got to treat you like one of the best, you know, and it's as simple as that. And it's not to break down Tulsi, which is another concern because people thought, well, you're in Bernie's camp. You're doing this to destroy Tulsi. No. I have my criticisms of Bernie as well. And by trying to get these candidates to respond to their criticisms, I'm trying to build them up, not break them down, because like it or not, it's very possible that they're going to team up. You know, they could be on the same ticket. So I'm not trying to tank Tulsi. I'm trying to get clarification as a supporter. It comes from a place of love, you know, not from a place of, I want to break you down.
I'm trying to take her down. I'm a Sanders supporter, but I like Tulsi. And
Me too.
I want her on that debate stage. You know, it's like I want her making that anti-war argument, and I want her pushing, because she's been unequivocal for that argument. Like, no hedge, you know, this is the position I'm taking, be it Venezuela, be it Syria, be it whatever. And
she's been the best on Venezuela, I think, of all the 2020 candidates, hands down.
It's just being honest.
Yeah.
You know, like if you know the United States track record in regards to Latin America, then it becomes somewhat difficult to have some of the conversations that you have on mainstream media. You know what I mean? It's
Absolutely.
Like, does Tapper know that the United States had this history in Latin America, you know, where pretty much all of these governments have been either toppled or strongmen been put in and so forth. And it's like, you're making this argument of, you know, we don't like dictators. It's somewhat nonsense. It's like you've been putting these
it's absurd. What's the statistic? We support financially 73%, I think it is, of the world's dictatorships. It's just that we don't like dictators who don't like us. That's what it's about.
The Tillerson memo is one of the most intriguing and no shit memos I think has been out there. Tillerson was given a memo that essentially said, look, we don't really care about human rights. We hit people who we don't like, you know, so we use human rights to hit China and Russia and Venezuela, but we turn a blind eye to our allies, you know, like Saudi Arabia or Turkey or Egypt in this case, that are also, for the most part, dictatorships. So
we care about human rights when it's convenient. If it's inconvenient, we're silent. And it's both scary and refreshing to see them just say it's like John Bolton, we want their oil. He's just saying it now, you know, and it's like, okay, I'm glad you're saying it, but at the same time, it does normalize it. So it's certainly terrifying.
The point, it's like saying, this food is not that great as opposed to this food completely sucks. Like if my wife asks me, how do you like it? And I'm like, it's not bad. Then my wife pretty much knows that I don't like it. This food sucks. It's that difference between those two things. We're going to toe this bureaucratic line as we steal the oil, as opposed to, no, we're just going to steal the oil. Like, you're saying the same thing, but there's more emphasis on the second part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I know what I'm saying. I like Tulsi. So when the anti-gay stuff came out, I was like, oh God. And right off the
Mhm.
bat, they used that as a way to try to delegitimize her. And I thought, well, I want to hear from her. I want to hear her
Yeah.
explain her position before, you just kind of ignore the fact that the woman is in a race.
Mhm.
And to me, I have a particular point of view on this because, I'm not gay. So I can
Mhm.
I can be empathetic about it. By the same token, think, well, I'm not losing any ground on that front.
Yeah.
But that's a little bit different than somebody who like, if I'm looking at somebody and the person, let's say, was brutally racist at some
Mhm.
point when they were younger, and their family was that way and they raised in that way, and somewhere along the way, they had this kind of come to Jesus moment where they changed. Do I, as an African American, look at this person and think, I'm gonna trust that? Or
Yeah.
do I say there are other candidates in the race, in which case I'm gonna just go to those other candidates? And can I really, feel some kind of way if I look at that and think to myself, yeah, I'm probably going to be looking at another candidate?
Mhm.
Or people who are in the LGBTQ community who looks at this and says, okay, maybe we need to be looking at another candidate. It's like, so I don't begrudge, even though I know in my position, it's like, I like Tulsi. This isn't necessarily something that completely guts me in the knees. And it seems like from objective reality, she's only been positive, like I
Yeah.
haven't seen a thing.
Well, and part of the thing is that people are unique, so every single person is going to have to make that judgment call for themselves. It's just that what we have to do as, I think, commentators is try to get as much information as we can to allow them to make that decision. And I went into the criticism being cognizant of the fact that I had to be very careful because even if she was objectively, at the time, I thought bad on this issue, um, that's not going to stop the establishment from weaponizing it and making it like the issue. So you do have to be mindful of these types of things because whatever weakness, they're just going to attack and attack and attack it. So the people who did lash out at me and thought that I was being unfair, I do get their willingness to try to defend Tulsi because instinctively that's what I do to progressives. Like I try to defend progressives because that every little thing they're going to extrapolate that and make it what they're about, and overlook everything else. So I am weary of that. But at the same time, I do think that we should hold politicians, especially progressives, to a high standard because they are better than everyone. That's why we support them, because they're so great. So yeah, it's just
that's because they are better than it. Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. The standard is higher.
100%.
No, I love that. The standard is higher. I mean, and for the most part, she has to explain herself,
And it's not just the LGBTQ issue. Let me just say, it's other issues too. Like I do think that it would be nice to know her stance on drones in particular.
Yeah.
I would like to know about the Modi situation. So it's just other things, and it's not like, oh well, I'm gonna pick on Tulsi. It's because no, I like you. That's why I care. I don't care about what Kirsten Gillibrand's stance is on Modi because I'm not going to support Kirsten Gillibrand. You know what I mean? So it's like I only am curious because I want to know everything there is to know about you because you are someone who I am willing to support and am enthusiastic about to a degree. And even if I'm a Bernie person, that doesn't mean that I don't care about the other progressives in the race because I've donated to all of the progressives, in order to get them on the debate stage. I bought a shirt from all of them, including Andrew Yang, which now I kind of regret. But I mean, I'm just trying to get more voices on the stage.
See, the thing about Yang I like is I like the fact that he talks about capitalism as a system. Like even if he comes to the answer that he comes to is not necessarily right, it's for the first time in a very long time, somebody is actually talking about it in the sense of this is not an act of God. These are policies that are in place that have allowed XYZ to take place. As opposed to this almost assumption that this is just kind of the way things are. There's a difference.
Right.
It's not just the way things are. There are laws that went into place. There are policies that went into place. There's allegiances and biases that go into place to ensure that things remain they are.
Yeah.
It's not an act of God. So in that point, I like. And I agree with you on the other point too about the other stuff. My thing with Tulsi was you have to regard her honestly. Like whether you like her or dislike her, or whether it's something you like, okay, I like her, I want her on the debate stage, you still have to regard her record honestly. So it's, if there's the issue with Modi and her support for Modi, I had people on discussing the Modi issue. And I got to be honest, I don't, like this is Indian politics, so I don't necessarily know full grasp and breadth of what is taking place. let me ask you about the Modi thing and the BJP. So what conclusions have you came to about that one? I gotta be honest, I'm still somewhat in the dark on the full gravity of what was taking place with regards to Modi, because you have some people who are completely against Modi and say, the guy's, a killer and so forth. And you have other people who will be like, no, he's just getting a bad rap. And I've heard her cast it as a certain degree of racism. I don't necessarily know if it's all, or
like in terms of racism or Hindu phobia against her, or
say that way. I've heard her make the argument that this is a certain degree of Hindophobia against her. I don't know if I buy that.
I don't find it persuasive. And I will add the caveat: Hindu phobia is a problem because there's so little visibility, for Hindu Americans, and she's one of them. So I do get the concern there, but I don't find that persuasive, because if you just try to apply that same criticism to another candidate, it's not persuasive. So, for example, if I saw Bernie Sanders take a photo op with Benjamin Netanyahu, am I not allowed to criticize that? You know what I mean? And that's just my perspective. People may not find that persuasive, but I just think that, and I tend to agree with you. I don't know the extent to which that's problematic. I just want it to be explained. I think that if we can call out Kamala Harris and Kirsten Gillibrand and Cory Booker for posing, and Elizabeth Warren for posing for photo ops with Netanyahu and other egregious characters, then we should do the same thing. And to be fair to Tulsi, she's posed with Modi's opposition, but she's posed for multiple photo ops with him. So for someone like Modi, who, and I don't know too much about him, I know that he's essentially a far-right Trumpian figure. And if you're a Muslim in India, it's not great to live under him. So I think that we are owed an explanation as supporters why you would choose to post for photo ops, and what was the extent of those meetings. Did you pressure him to do better? And because another criticism I saw was that, oh well, everyone posed for photo ops with Modi. Obama did. It's like, but yeah, I don't like Obama. I voted for him before. But you're not Obama. I'm holding you to a better standard because Obama is a neoliberal and I view you as someone who is more progressive. So, that's not, the whataboutism with regard to that issue is not persuasive to me. So I kind of feel like that issue, we just need a lot of explanations. And the reason why it feels like there's this dogpile on Tulsi, which I'm fully aware of, is because we've never looked into her record. But we're doing that now because she's running. So it's kind of everything that we saw has bubbled up to the surface, and now we're just kind of taking a look at it. But she never really was held to the scrutiny because we didn't have to look, into her that deeply. So it feels 100%. Yeah, it feels like I can get how you feel defensive, especially when the establishment is trying to deliberately smear her. But I mean, at the same time, we have to hold candidates' feet to the fire. And I've been criticized for criticizing every single Democrat because I've shit on everyone, including Bernie Sanders. So it's like you can't tell me now that I'm not being fair, because if I see something I disagree with, I just call it out. And the worst case scenario in me criticizing these candidates from the left is to get them to improve. And that's all I hope for. I'm not trying to take them down. You know what I mean?
Sanders, the people, some of those are hard videos, right? Because
they're hard. Yeah,
those are not easy videos. When he did the humanitarian thing, and he was like, Maduro needs to let humanitarian aid into the country itself, et cetera, et cetera. You're like,
yeah,
but you realize that humanitarian aid is, it's like Sanders is being cynical. He knows exactly what this is for. He's inoculating himself in the general election. And it's like, I may know what you're doing, but Jesus Christ, there are human beings at the end of that.
Yeah.
That sucks. And which means I have to do a video essentially making the point that, Sanders is being overtly cynical in what he's doing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
But you have to make those videos. Like I don't know.
They're not fun, but you got to do it.
Make those videos. So let's go to 2020. 2020, I think, is going to be a fuck fest.
It's already a fuck fest.
To put it mildly, to put it in scientific terms. I love the fact that there are a few things. I love the fact that the conversations that we're having have went way past what, it's like we're talking about Medicare for all as being the major position, not necessarily, it's the other position that's trying to push back against it. We're talking about the expansion of Social Security, the $15 minimum wage. These are just kind of, at this point, mainstream ideas in regards to politics. And go back to Obama's this was mind blowing that you're having these conversations. Hell, we're talking about reparations. Like even that conversation. Like some of these conversations that we're having just over the course of the last few years have been amazing. And so it's this thing where it feels like it's going to be a real race. You're going to have a guy who's a socialist on stage, a woman who's a complete anti-war candidate on stage, a woman who wants to essentially beat up any Wall Street banker she can get her hands on. And you're going to have corporatists. Like, that's, you make an argument that that's the election. What do you think is going to happen with this? I mean, because Yang apparently is going to be on the debate stage. That shocked me, if I'm being honest.
It shocked me too.
He has more votes than Tulsi?
That's what really shocked, because I would have assumed that she would have made that requirement before Yang.
That's so bizarre to me, and I have to ask. Yang said on Fox News that the Democratic Party kind of leapt to congratulate him and bring him on the debate stage and everything else. And I thought to myself, is it possible that the reason why they're bringing him in is because they want somebody to essentially hit Sanders from the left, and that ultimately they can pull votes in this kind of it's like, yeah, we love Yang in the race because we don't think he's going to win, but we also know he's going to pull votes from Sanders. That's me being, a conspiracy theorist. But
no. And honestly, I'm really cynical, and I think we have a right to be cynical after 2016. But yeah, you know what I mean? I think that if you're trying to be charitable with that and them trying to bend over backwards to accommodate, Yang, it's maybe Tom Perez being overly paranoid because we're on his ass, like flies on shit. Like, every little thing that he's done has been scrutinized, and he knows that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is still being scrutinized. So I think maybe it's just fear of not pissing off progressives, knowing that we're not going to be, we're not going to take it lying down like Democrats do when Republicans shit on them.
I'm curious. So what's the result? Like, not taking the line down, what does that mean? So do you think they'll cheat him again? And if you do think they'll cheat him again, no, let me say it this way. What do you think people will do if they cheat him again? That's the first point. Because I got to be honest, I don't necessarily know an answer to that outside of them losing again, which doesn't seem like it's enough. And second, do you think that they think that? Like, I guess I'm trying to get into the heads of the individuals that are in the DNC. And how cynical are they? Do they look at this and says, these guys are on our ass, they're paying attention, that's why we're trying to do everything right? Or we just need to be more clever? Getting our people through.
It's hard.
Delegates, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. If I had to guess, and this is all just speculative, my guess would be that the DNC wouldn't do the same exact thing as last time, because that's what we're already looking for. But I think that what we'd see is something more covert. Like one example is, of the Californian State Party moving up the primary to potentially give Kamala Harris a boost. I think you're going to see a more around
the edges.
Like a decentralized effort. But my view this time is that I think that Bernie Sanders can potentially overcome it and trump the field. And I mean trump the field in the Donald Trump sense, the way that the RNC clearly didn't want him to win, but he just had so much overwhelming support. He overcame it. Bernie nearly overcame it in 2016, in spite of all the fuckery.
Well,
so
6% of the vote total, something like that.
With no name recognition.
No name recognition. Nobody knew who he was. I think he had like 2% when he first started.
Yeah.
And it just came out the blue, out of nowhere.
Yeah. So I'm not as worried about the the rigging in the sense of like state parties trying to change the rules, because I think that most of them that have already done that, like the California State Party, they're done with that. I mean, you see these stupid loyalty pledges and whatnot, but I think that the biggest thing that we have to look out for is the political games that they're going to play, because there's a lot more candidates in the race now. The media can easily have plausible deniability if they kind of like ignore Bernie and try to prop up anyone else who's not Bernie. So I think that we just, my whole thing is, you don't know what they're going to do, and these people are very creative. So just be vigilant. And if you see something, then, you can call it out. And we should call it out, because after we were royally screwed in 2016, we're going to watch every little thing that they're doing, because we can't afford not to. But with that being said, I'm less worried this time. And I'm more aware of the political games. if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense. I mean, the first time around, you could think to yourself, you're just like, oh man, this feels like they're screwing the guy, but I can't be certain. Like, it's that,
Yeah.
And then you see WikiLeaks and be like, God damn it, I knew it. It's like,
and then Donna Brazile.
And Donna Brazile comes out. Donna Brazile even comes out and writes that article saying that, she found the document and the thing. She was hawking her book. So at that point, she wanted to be honest. The hawking of the book inspired her to be honest. And she's like, yeah, I found the cancer where essentially Hillary Clinton had absolute control over the edifice.
It wasn't rigged, though. She just had absolute control over their press releases and their finances, but it wasn't rigged.
It wasn't rigged. You can really still make that argument. Oh, it's not rigging. I mean, she just controlled the whole edifice. It's like, what if the Redskins, if the Washington Redskins, so let's say the Cleveland Cavaliers, if the Cleveland Cavaliers was having a basketball match, and they own the building, they own the referees, they own the distribution, they own every aspect of this thing was owned by them, including the contest itself, meaning the rules of the contest and all. I mean, come on. It is like, oh, it's not rigged. We're playing a fair contest. I mean, we didn't stop the other players.
Yeah. No, and let me clarify that, though, with the word rigging, because a lot of people try to use that as evidence that we're conspiracy theorists. But what we're not saying when we talk about it being rigged, that... Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I got a little bit of feedback. No, we're not saying that Bernie had no chance of winning. We're just saying that Hillary Clinton had an advantage from the institution that was supposed to be neutral. So I've used this analogy before and I really like it because I'm a nerd. If you're playing Mario Kart and you're racing against someone who's able to use items, they get the boost at the start, but you're not allowed to do that, you don't have any items, then it's not necessarily a guarantee that you're going to lose, but you're just at a horrendous disadvantage. That's what we're talking about here.
Well, and but yeah, saying that, everything is fair and impartial. Like,
exactly.
We clearly it's not fair and impartial, but we're also telling you that it's fair and impartial.
Exactly, which is very nefarious and just unethical, to say the least.
Beto is going to flame out, but you think Beto has a shot?
I do. I don't want to admit that, but the only reason why I say that is because I do see a lot of I don't want to say enthusiasm, but I want to say establishment support, where they're kind of... It seemed like Kamala would be the individual that the establishment is supporting, but now it seems like it's Beto. And that actually makes me feel bad for Kamala, because out of all the establishment Democrats, I would want her to be the last remainder because she is the most tolerable. Everyone else, I cannot stand. Beto's arm movements, Joe Biden's just condescension. I would rather have Kamala go against Bernie than Beto versus Bernie.
I can't stand his arm movements. I'm sitting here
not normal.
Why is he doing that? Like, he's like flopping about the stage.
It's not natural. Who talks like that?
I don't know who talks that way. That was I think she was a senior, and she confronts him. She's like, she goes into this thing of bundlers. Like, this guy had the Obama bundlers and all this other stuff, and then she goes into this thing of, when are we going to get a policy from you, Beto?
Love her.
Like, something other than a platitude.
Yeah,
that was awesome. So, last question. End result. So I know some lefties, when they look at the world and they say, they're supporting this particular policy or this particular politician or whatever. For you, what is the end result? I don't necessarily think you're a hardcore socialist. I know some people, from the standpoint of the left, they have this idea of what they want the world to look like, but it's somewhat nebulous. Are you in that camp? What's your overarching objective of it all?
Yeah, I kind of view myself as tepidly being in the camp of democratic socialism. I'm not a social democrat because I don't think that is enough. Mm-hmm. I would settle for social democrat, and I say settle because it's a lot better than just completely unregulated capitalism. But I'm more of a social democrat, but not 100% committed to, 100% anti-capitalism. But to me, I feel like you have to have the role of the private market so regulated, so tame, that it poses no risk of rearing its ugly head. Because the way that I kind of see social democracy is you're setting yourself up for this pendulum where every 50 or so years, you're going to need another paradigm shift because it just gets out of whack. Like, we already solved the problem and saved capitalism from itself with the New Deal, and it's been completely unraveled. Yeah, we need a new deal, and in 50 years we're going to need a new deal. You know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like the only solution is democratic socialism, where you completely eliminate the threat of capitalism, because all it needs is just a little bit of room to grow, and it spreads. It doesn't just, like, disenfranchise workers and exploit workers, but then it seeps into democracy itself. Citizens United was, basically the opening of the floodgates, but it's literally killing democracy, and it's now killing our planet. So I've become a lot more anti-capitalist over the years. I really started off social democrat, I think, like in the Obama days, but now I'm more and more just firmly democratic socialist. But I very much emphasize the Democrat, because people like to, draw inferences that aren't there. Like, I've been called a communist a lot lately as I've become more anti-capitalist. It's that if a communist would be insulted if they thought that I was a communist. You know what I mean?
That always trips me out, to be honest. When people call me a communist, there's like commune is like hey comrade or something to that effect.
You know what it is though? You want to know what it is, Jamarl? I've come to this conclusion that they have to move that goalpost and call us communists now, because we're not hiding from socialism. Nobody's really hiding. It's not, oh, I'm not a socialist. It's, fuck yeah, I'm a socialist. Are you not? Are you dumb? You know what I mean? So they have to move it to communist, because they don't have anywhere else to go. If you own it, they got nothing on you. It's not an attack anymore. It's just you admitting, what you are. And it's not like, it's what I am willing to accept as someone like Sanders, who would get in and change the status quo. But my goal is that we shift the Overton window back, and we start moving little by little to, a more equitable system in terms of it being more socialistic. Yeah. I'm not for like radical change right away. I'm not for regime change. I'm not for a revolution, because people are afraid and averse to change. But I just think that little by little, we need more and more policies like Social Security, like Medicare for all, and strip away the profit motive where it really doesn't need to be,
Essentially take one plank out of it at a time. You don't necessarily need to take
that's perfect
at once. In fact, what's his name? Slavoj Žižek. He makes this argument. It's like, what happens on day 2 of the revolution? He was like, I would sell my mother to see what happens on day 2.
Yeah.
Because, day 1 is going to be chaos, and day 2 is going to be a fucking disaster. No, that's a fair point, man. I like the way you said that. It's funny. I started more so on the Jack Fresco side, where it's like, get rid of money, et cetera, et cetera. And then as I've gone, I think I've moved further into the right in a weird way. But like,
to the right.
Yeah, well, at the point where you're that far to the left, there's no.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right.
There's nowhere else to go. But I think I've moved to this thing of, if there's a strength in capitalism, very specific. This thing of acquisition of wealth, meaning allow people's greed to get the better of them, and go gangbusters. The problem with that is, like you said, it seeps into the political space. Mm-hmm. You can have capitalism, or you can have or democracy. Mm-hmm. You can have both, and oftentimes you're floating into this kind of between the levels of what you have. No, I agree with you on this. It's whatever takes place need to be so absolute that this idea of capitalism rearing its ugly head in regards to this threat to democracy and the planet needs to be put down.
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, you guys can have your small businesses in a very confined space, in a very confined pen. You're not touching railways, you're not touching energy networks, you're not touching, et cetera. But if you're going to build these little things that the public itself needs, or at the very least, the technology needs to be used at the behest of the public, not just for 1%. I agree with you. It's my perspective of this has changed as I've done my show, just from the people that I've had on the show, and all these conversations, especially even the audience, like arguing with the audience. And
you know what? I'll say this. I don't think that democratic socialism is the end all be all. As human beings, we're always going to be trying to improve. You're never going to reach that point. And if we're able to survive climate change, the globe, will be, I feel like we're going to see ourselves less as Americans or Europeans and see ourselves more as humans. And that's going to have implications for the way that we govern then. You
Yes.
know what I mean? I'm not saying, oh, it's going to be one world government, although that would be, something that we need to do to protect the planet in the far future. I don't think we're ready for that now. But I mean, like, government is always going to change. Like, the process of governance itself is like trying to hit a moving target. There's no perfect way to do it. It's just that is it acceptable for us to acknowledge that capitalism isn't it? Yeah, I think it's pretty reasonable to accept that.
And I agree with you with the humanist thing. I don't think we realize how significant technology has changed us.
Yeah.
It's like you go for 100,000, 200,000 years. Well, for the most part, you just, whatever. You can only walk as fast as your feet can take you.
Mm-hmm.
You can only hear as far as somebody can yell. And within a very short span of time in comparison, you have this technological innovation where you have satellites in space. You have another ship on another planet. And the way that you relate to one another is digital.
Mm-hmm.
Like your comments. Your comments is not, you just being outside anymore. Your comments is Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, where people communicate and have these conversations and interactions. And it's like, what does that mean growing up in that as a kid, as opposed to growing up 20 years before? Those are dramatically different. Like, I think about how I was when I was growing up versus how kids grow up today. And, this thing of email and stuff wasn't as prevalent as it was back then. And this idea of attacking somebody on television or on YouTube or on the net wasn't prevalent. Like, all of these things have changed. How you raise your kids, how even we communicate with one another. The moment that something takes place on some other part of the world, people are aware of it. I mean, the reason why we're talking about Venezuela right now is because of the technological thing. Beforehand, the CIA would have overthrown Venezuela. We would have woke up like, holy shit, look, did you know Venezuela?
True, yeah.
So it's man, I agree with you, man. It's our world and us are dramatically changing, and particularly in the way that we engage with
always. It's always going to be in flux. It's never going to be static. New problems will arise. And even if we look to like Scandinavia as good economic systems, they still have their social problems. Like you're never going to reach perfection. So that's why it makes me so mad when I hear people on Fox News say, oh, well, these socialists, these Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes, they just want a utopia. It's like, no, we're acknowledging the reality that we will never have a utopia. It's just that we can be better.
So people take on the attributes that are necessary to survive in whatever landscape they are. I mean, it's always going to change. There is no standard. Is there anything that I didn't ask? I always ask this question at the very end. Is there anything that I didn't ask you within the context of the time that you've stayed with me? We've gone all over the place. But I always want to give my guests a chance to say something if I didn't answer.
No, not that I could think of. I talk about politics so much, and I know that you do too, that it all just kind of blends together. Yeah. So if there's anything you wanted to bring up or talk about, then I'm game for whatever. But yeah, in terms of what I would like to talk about, no, I think this is all interesting. I've got 2020 fever. I know people hate the horse race, but it's kind of interesting to me, admittedly. But yeah, I'm always in political mode. Even when I turn off the camera, I'm still thinking about politics. I'm still strategizing. I'm still, you can't let it go. So yeah.
Because she's like, because her thing is, you will be on all day, like live doing a show, and then get off and talk to me about the exact same thing. Or like sometimes I would run through when I'm talking about doing a scene or doing a show, I would end up talking to her about it because I like to clarify it in my head before doing it. And she's like, you realize you're not doing that for me, right? you're just, you're incessantly talking about this stuff. She would get annoyed with me over this stuff. And to some degree, I understand it. It's like if you're consistently talking about something over and over and over again, then you have a show and you're talking about it and it becomes
well, part of the reason why I really, there were many reasons why I started the podcast, but I would just talk my husband's ear off about politics like nonstop. And it's like, okay, I need like some other venue to vent. Yeah, I need an outlet. So I think that your wife and my husband probably have a lot in common with regard to that.
Yeah,
because it never leaves me. Like
it doesn't stop.
And no, and sometimes I can't turn my brain off like at night. Like if I have a segment that I want to do, then I can't film any, like I have to get that out like before I can even focus on anything else. And if there's like a victory or defeat, if an election happens, like I didn't sleep the day that AOC won her primary. I just didn't sleep. You know what I mean? It's like it doesn't leave you. You know, it's ingrained in your DNA.
The elections are holidays to me. Like when we
1000%.
We were traveling, and it was during the elections where the Democrats took the House, and I was covering certain seats all night. Like it literally went to like 3 a.m. when my burnt out. You know, just kind of took it to the hilt. No, man, it's an interesting job, or you can say career, or just life in general, and doing it. So, dude,
100%.
You coming on to the show, the Humanist, Mike Figueredo.
That was close. That was close enough. I'll accept it. Like,
screw that. People murder my name. But Richard Wolf came on the show. Richard Wolf kept calling me Jamari, and I was like, all right, I'm not gonna correct.
Oh, your name isn't that difficult, Jamarl Tom, and your last name is Thomas. There's no excuses for
Jamari is like, all right, I'm not gonna correct Richard Wolf.
Yeah, I know it's so awkward, like to correct them like on the spot. I'll tell you this: when I was the only graduation I ever attended was my community college graduation, and I started walking because they announced Michael, so I walk, and mid-stage he goes and I'm like, are you fucking kidding? So I literally had to turn around, and I had to go explain to her how to pronounce my name after she spelled it out phonetically. And at that point, I realized you just got to roll with it. Just let them fuck it up. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't bug them too much. I don't think Jamarl is that hard. I think the problem
Jamarl is not hard. There's no excuse.
I think they're used to saying Jamal, and then as there are here. It's like
that's true. That's true.
Et cetera, et cetera.
But I feel like it's not common, but it's still easiest enough to where I feel like I'm not easy enough to not get it messed up. Like there are certain names where it's like, okay, you don't get to mess that up. Like, and I feel like Jamarl is easy enough to not mess up.
Mess that up, Bob. It's like Bob. Speaking of your graduation. This made me put me in mind of this, and I'll end it here. I did this video the other day of Joe Biden. So when Heidi Heitkamp, when she won, I don't know if you've seen this, when Heidi Heitkamp won her Senate seat, Heidi had like an 8% chance of winning that race, meaning she had no chance. So like they didn't think she was going to win at all. She wins. Now, when she goes up in order to be sworn in, Joe Biden is the one that's swearing her in. She has her husband, her daughter, her son, and Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, as she's being sworn in, he says, open your legs. You're going to get frisked. And he's like trying to explain the joke to everybody else who's there. Like she's laughing it off. Like she's just like, all right, I'm just going to laugh this off. Her husband is like, I don't get this. And then it's like, why are you telling this woman to open her legs? Like, what is appropriate behavior for somebody of your age? That's the first.
Yeah.
God, Joe Biden, man.
He has no self-awareness is the problem. And you just know that he's one of those people who has no sense of somebody's personal space. Like when they're doing this to you and you're not like backing off, you know that type of person.
The women are like pulling away from him and he's still going in.
Yeah. And I'm someone who I am like very much like people know like you can't get in my personal space, like arm length. Like you can't. And I had a friend that would be like that would talk really close. And I'm like, dude, you have to back up. If I can smell your breath, you're talking too fucking close. So back up. So it's like I cringe when I see how close he is and when I see their reaction because I know how uncomfortable they are because I'm kind of like the same way. Like, give me my space. You know what I mean? So he's just I fucking hate Joe Biden. He's such a creep.
You think he's gonna run?
I do. I think he's gonna run. I'm surprised he hasn't announced yet. I think he'd be honestly like from his perspective, if you're polling in number one, you'd be kind of stupid to not run if you want it. But I kind of like. I wonder how long he's gonna last because is he gonna be the Jeb Bush? Jeb Bush was polling ahead of everyone.
I think he's Jeb Bush. I honestly, because
me too.
They're acting. I think they want Joe Biden to be the corporate candidate, but Joe Biden has a lot of stuff that he has to answer for. Like the crime bill in and of itself is problematic. The war vote is problematic, especially since you have one independent senator from Vermont that was on the opposite side of those debates and was on the right side of those debates that Joe Biden was at. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong. I mean, I know he's polling higher right now, but like I said, Jeb Bush, they thought Jeb Bush was going to be amazing.
Yeah. anything can happen, and this is why I don't like to make predictions, because you never know. But what I will say is that I think that there's still some momentum for Biden now, because people still have rose-colored glasses about the Obama era. I know, like, people like who are in politics, like you and I, like, we know that Obama was a disappointment, but just when you contrast Obama with someone like Trump, you have the stability, you don't have the mean tweets, so they just think, oh, well, what a wonderful time that was. And so when Joe Biden reemerges and he's this gaffe machine who's a creep, it's going to be kind of like mask off, and they're going to be like, oh, what the fuck was I thinking? He's not Obama. He's associated with Obama, but he has not even anywhere near the charisma that Obama has, like in a completely different league. And he, like, honestly is like trying to be antagonistic towards millennials. Like, I just
bizarre. I mean, millennials,
it's really bizarre.
The largest voting demographic this year. And, pissing them off is not necessarily the way I think to win a race. I was watching Morning Joe the other day, and Joe Biden comes in, and they ask him, says something about Sanders. He says, I am the most progressive record of any politician. It's like, what? And Joe Scarborough, they just kind of let that go. Like, wait a minute, he just outright lied. He not even a good lie. Like, that's a Trump lie. Yeah.
And I got why he was positioning himself as the anti-Bernie, because you've got to, like, you're not going to get the progressive vote. You know what I mean? But now it's like, I kind of see him trying to flip on that and say, well, I'm progressive as well. It's like, no. You cannot have it both ways. You got to be progressive, or you got to be the corporatist. Just own it if you're a corporatist.
But you know why? I mean, the reason why is because he realizes, just like Kamala Harris, just like Cory Booker, just like Kirsten Gillibrand, just like all of the other people who are running in the race, that this election, in order to get through the primaries, I am going to have to be a lefty. And I'm going to have to be authentic enough to make them believe that I'm a lefty. And so that, I always say Sanders made them better liars. And so you have these guys all of a sudden, Medicare for all, and you got to, do they believe it? That's always the question. It's one that you can push for anything. The question is, when you get up in the morning, do you actually believe it when you're pushing for it?
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's funny because I like it, because you can tell that single-handedly progressives have moved the Overton window, because they know, it's an undeniable fact that they know that we're not going to take anything less than Medicare for all, like, full stop. So that's why you see these people who don't support Medicare for all, like Pete Buttigieg, call his proposal Medicare for everyone who wants it, or Beto O'Rourke call it Medicare for everyone. It's like, you're using the words Medicare.
It's been disingenuous.
Yeah. So it's like, I can see the influence that progressives have had, and it's nice to see. But at the same time, now it's like, okay, we're past politics. I want to fucking win, and I want the policies codified into law. I'm at that point now.
It's not enough to just win the argument. I'm
tired of elections. I want policies now. Deliver them,
That's where I'm at. I feel you on that one, man.
Yep.
And look, this is an exciting time to be alive. It's very possible that one independent senator from Vermont who's running as a Democrat could potentially win this race. Like, this is the first time in my lifetime where there's a chance of somebody who I actually want to win, and who I think is a true believer to win. Like, that's like, the DNC for the most part gets a rewrite to some degree, because I don't think he's going to put in Tom Perez as head of the DNC. That would be really bizarre. Not to mention this is 2020 could be pretty badass, man. Potentially.
It really could. And I'm going to think positively as long as I can, but I'm going to set my expectations really, really low.
Oh, dude, I really appreciate this.
Thank you, man.
I'm going to put your show at the bottom itself so people can find you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming on to the show, Mike.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.
No, dude, I really appreciate it. And like I said, I know it was short notice. It was like, hey, it was like, he was like, I can do it today. It was like, done. I'll take it. Dude, thank you. You guys have a good night. If you guys enjoyed the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You guys can always support the PayPal page. Thanks all. Yeah, dude.